They sit at the top of the Commonwealth. And on the basis of that, you know, if they make a pronouncement about that, are they going to talk about Australia and the Aborigines? And I don't know who and who, because each of those, all those are things that are happening under Commonwealth countries. So I think he's been quite diplomatically right to recognize that they happened, right? And and express his view on that, yeah. But the apology belongs to the country, which is the UK, and the monarch is actually the head of the Commonwealth. Yeah, he's also the head of the Church of England, and etc., etc. And they happen to reside in the UK. I'm probably sort of taking a very nice roundabout way of saying that I think the king is not the right person to do it. I think the prime minister of the country is the right person to do it, because the person who ordered all these things to happen wasn't the king.
Yeah,
all these things happened under the then prime minister of the country, who was the one who was leading all these activities that happened, that people think, that people consider to have been historical injustices. Yeah, and that is the colonial government, not the royalty. So I think he did the right thing by recognizing that all these things happened, and stopped short of what everybody has been wanting the king to say, which is to apologize. And I don't think that the king has apologized for anything that has happened in the Commonwealth since royalty started, and I don't think it is their role.
Right. Okay, is that sufficient, or you wanted to chime in?
I think it's gone to great length to exonerate the king from all of this, but I wouldn't have gone as far as he did. I think, not that I expect much out of apologies, but there have implications for what then follows, and that's why I think governments are always circumspect.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's nothing
maybe just to add on that, the fact that currently the Prime Minister is of African, Asian, Kenyan extraction, perhaps taking cue from what Engineer Patrick is saying, maybe it's the time to do that. But that be as it may, maybe it's time to start thinking of reparations. Indeed, next month we are having one of the leading authors in terms of reparations as a matter. So in terms of addressing historical injustices, the world needs to have a conversation on this.
Right. Bill, you want to say something?
Yeah, I don't share what Patrick said regarding the royalty. At the time, that times of the colonial period, the royalty had more significant role in the government than they have today. They had a more significant role, and to a large extent they were party, because they have never spoken out. Even at that time, it doesn't preclude you from being, you're not just an observer when your country is committing atrocities. And apology, it's like our legal situation today. If you, that's why lawyers tell you don't accept an apology. Once you apologize, then you've taken liability.
Right.
And that's why they're avoiding that word and saying we regret and that story. But I think after that, what happened in the US a couple of years ago on the Black Lives Matter, and the way this matter gained a lot of traction, the historical injustices, and people were pulling down all those statues of all those, those former. So I think we are not done with these fellows. We will demand reparations.
No, I think I fully agree, but the reparations are to the country, and the leader of the country is actually the Prime Minister.
He's a British king.
Rishi Sunak should actually be the one to come out and to come and actually say that one. A lot of these countries, the monarchs don't actually get involved in the politicals. You look at the Dutch, look at the Swedish, and all the rest of them. The Dutch had colonies, and we haven't had that coming from the.
See, when the Prime Minister of Britain resigns, who does he take resignation to?
Because they before they make any movement, they have to consult with the monarch.
And more importantly, they you see this is called a British king. They're the ones who appoint, no Commonwealth. We have no role in his crowning.
Just in addition, actually, the king is the head of state.
Yeah.
Even Great Britain, the king is the head. The Prime Minister is the head of government. But the head of state is the king. So I think it's a thin line.
So the debate is whether the atrocities were falling within the government or the head of states.
The state, which is both, or it's not about government. The state of
the state of Britain actually should be accountable on this. But I wanted just to ask the question regarding the Commonwealth itself. In this epoch of time, whether it's of any material utility, of any value for us as people who were colonized by the Britain. Commonwealth, when you talk about Commonwealth, what are some of the incentives that really comes from the Commonwealth itself? Aside from the games, and what else does it really come from?
I think there's people around this panel may know a lot more than I do, but the little I can say is that there's a lot more to it than the games. For one, that's been the institutions that have been providing technical assistance across countries and so on. There have been preferential arrangements among countries who are in the Commonwealth in areas like education, but also trade. We've learned a lot from each other in the legal systems and so on. It's a kind of extended family, and I think for a nation which polygamy is official, like it is in Kenya, I think having a Commonwealth is really a great thing. It's you have very many stepmothers as it were, and you have your own mother. I think it's a very good arrangement that there is.
The bulk for me, the key issue is what's the wealth that's common?
That's what I'm asking. That's what I'm trying to tease it. What's the wealth that is common?
Yeah, I think, of course, Kenya as a country has been proud, and I believe remains proud, to be a leading member of the Commonwealth. In the technology sector where I come from, the Commonwealth Telecom Organization is quite key and was quite instrumental in pushing chaperoning Africa and the Commonwealth countries, including in the Caribbean, into the cyber world. But beyond that, I think we definitely, the question you asked is quite timely. We probably need to review what more could we do in terms of developing that Commonwealth and utilize it more in an equitable manner that's just, and harnessing it more. Of course, culturally, and for Africa, I've been to a number of international meetings where the divide between the Francophone and the Anglophone is very evident. So the Commonwealth normally becomes a very good platform to rally those who are leaning on a linguistic basis. But as to whether it should remain that way, I'm really not too sure. I was very happy to see Rwanda join the Commonwealth, even though traditionally Francophone. I think if we went beyond just the linguistic and cultural differences and converted it, made it more economic emphasis in terms of promoting business, trade, it would make a lot of sense. For example, it's saddened to note that Kenya doesn't have an embassy in the Caribbean, yet we're only 4 hours away from the West African coast of the Caribbean. There's so much we should be doing together. So yes, let's just relook, how do we emphasize more on the economic aspect?
Right. So is there any
I think we have to recognize that the Commonwealth, I just Googled very quickly, I mean, this is the thing about having digital stuff here. The Commonwealth has actually got a charter that states what it is there. And just to read, it says the Commonwealth Charter expresses the commitment of member states to the development of a free and democratic societies and the promotion of peace and prosperity to improve the lives of all the people of the Commonwealth. There's a whole series of other things that come through in terms of democracy, human rights, international peace and security, sustainable development and so forth. So there's a wide range of things. But I think what the Commonwealth suffers from is its origin and why it came across. And one of the things it needs to do, if it's got to meet what it's got, and it's a coming together of a group of nations who are brought together by the colonial times, and nations have the option of quitting if they don't like it at this point in time. But I think there is an opportunity to create a bloc that can be of significant economic benefit to those countries if they change the way the Commonwealth operates. But currently, the way the Commonwealth is set up, it is like, everybody's still looking at the Commonwealth the way it was formed those many years back. And I think there's a trick that we are missing as countries to actually turn that into something that is positive. But at the moment, the word Commonwealth is associated with former colonies of the UK, right? And that is all that it is, and therefore has got a very negative connotation. I'm always an optimist. I believe that things like that should be able to be turned around to have a positive outcome for those countries.
All right, so I wanted to ask Bilo, does also the UK not being part now of the European Union with the Brexit, is it of any great import to be in the Commonwealth if they're not really in that particular union as it is right now, or there's such a difference when they were before? We as beneficiaries of the Commonwealth.
No, the European Union is an economic, basically, actually, it is more economic, social, legal relationship between those countries in Europe, and the main focus is always the economic aspect of it. But Commonwealth is nothing more than a colonial, if you will, it's UK trying to maintaining the umbilical cord with all those countries that it believes it gave birth to. They gave us independence, they discovered us, they did this, they did that.
Very good time. So the umbilical cords are still there.
That's all it is. It has no economic, I don't think the Commonwealth has any economic value other than just some neocolonial hegemony by UK to try and say those are our former colonies. And the same way that the French, they're not adding any value to those African countries, except that through the culture, the language, and all those other relationships, they're maintaining that colonial structure still in place. That's basically what you are. Your language is inferior, your culture is inferior. We are the what That's otherwise, I don't see any other value Commonwealth has really today.
All right. Okay. Now that let's just come back. I wanted just to ask Patrick, because I know also he's an avocado farmer. And there's a latest development that we have from the Horticultural Crops Directorate that is banning the exports of avocado from Friday. Actually tomorrow, to allow for maturity as part of measures to protect the country's lucrative external markets. Well, there's nothing much to say.
No, it's a reflection of how some unscrupulous farmers harvest the avocados earlier than they should, especially because when the market is flooded with avocados which have ripened properly and meets the standards, the prices will drop. So some people try and harvest early so they can put it in the market and get better prices because everybody else is not yet harvesting. And what happens is that those avocados, when they go out, they don't. Although they may meet the sort of the good quality requirements, by the time they get to the market, they're actually either rotten or they haven't got the right quality and feel. And when you trace them back, they're traced back to the country. So those unscrupulous people who actually sell in the name of Kenya are the ones they're trying to stop from doing so. So what they do is they estimate roughly when the maturity time should be, and they ban exports because now the fruits are getting ready. So they ban exports until such time as they're sure that the fruits are now ready to go out and the quality is right. So it's an ill that that farmers and traders have brought upon themselves for the government to actually now, and the Horticultural Crops Development Authority has jumped in to protect the genuine avocado farmers in that particular instance. So it's inflicted upon ourselves. And also I think the other thing that we recognize is that the avocados, and I'm learning this by the way, I'm not yet an expert on this, avocados actually have two seasons. There's like the high season when most countries produce, and then there's a low season which there's another production in some parts of the country and certain parts of the world, and there's not that big a production in that season, and therefore you get premium. So in Kenya, you find that the big growing area, which is central Kenya, their season actually starts around about November, December, up to about April. And then the other parts of Kenya, which are beginning up, which is Western Kenya, theirs is after, and that is the low season. So they're likely to get much higher returns when they sell them out. So it's a complex thing, but I think the government is doing what it has to do to stop the unscrupulous traders from spoiling the market for Kenya. Yeah.
All right. Binyasi Sakwa, I don't think if avocado is part of the KDC's radar. That
no, it isn't. And I only got a few trees. I think I planted on a test basis 6 or 7 stems. Now they are grown trees. I have some technical challenges I'll have to share maybe with Patrick and hear how he solves this. That sometimes, some years the fruit bears but does not move to ripening. So I've used various methods, including a primitive one. The primitive one was, I was told, if you give a shock to a tree, in the process of healing, because it's treating itself, it tends to correct all the other malforms that might have occurred. So you put in a 6-inch nail in one of the trees, and lo and behold, the next, I'm not kidding.
It's a good one, eh?
The fruits began
shock
to...
therapy.
The fruits, I think it's a kind of, what do you call this Chinese treatment? Acupuncture. Yes. But I demonstrated that actually I can have beautiful avocados. I just have not had time to get into it.
You're giving Patrick ideas on acupuncture of the avocados. You'll find nails, weed and trees there. All right, we just also want to welcome you, Shemo Choda. I know you're in Brussels. You can tell us more what was happening in Brussels. And today is World Cities Days. World Cities Day, people celebrating the cities. Kansas City as well is one of them. You can talk more about what was happening in Brussels.
Debal, now that you mentioned Brussels, let me begin by condoling with the embassy in Brussels. The embassy just learned, last night lost one of its staff.
Okay.
While we were in Brussels, Professor Ndemo was very welcoming. For me, coming from the ICT world, we had lots to talk about. And we did spend quite a bit of time to reflect on how far we have come, but maybe even more importantly, what can we do for the younger, upcoming ICT professionals, knowing that the future of the world is digital. Now that you're mentioning EU and Britain, for that matter, the reason why the EU was a GIZ-funded project called WIDU. WIDU is a bird that migrates between Europe and Africa and back every so often. And it's leveraging diaspora remittances to support Mama Mboga through business grants. And about 2,000 jobs also have been created in the country out of that project. And part of why we were out there was to reach out to the diasporas, to inform them about this opportunity that they could partner with the project to help their kith and kin to create jobs and sustainable enterprises in Kenya. Of course, EU recognizing that Britain is not part of it, you asked that question that perhaps there would be more value to the Commonwealth if there was, if the if UK was still part of the EU, and I fully agree with that. And Brussels being the capital of the EU, it was quite significant. We had opportunity to interact with officials of the OACPS, formerly it was called ACP, the Organization of Africa, Caribbean, Pacific States, but also a number of, apart from our ambassador, the Ghanaian ambassador, the Nigerian ambassador, just to check how do we rally Africa's diasporas towards our growth. But in particular, we also found there is quite a whole lot of investors, potential, that are looking towards Africa to put in their capital. I think Kenya is fast emerging with the stabilizing of the politics that we could tap into a lot more. We were privileged while there to meet the deputy president, was in Brussels as well. Also while in Paris, France, the PS of Diaspora Affairs was also there. And again, the same thing happened as we were celebrating Mashujaa Day, which the Kenyans were very thrilled about. But then, of course, one important point was, whereas we have been having information sessions with the Kenyans abroad about this particular project, being physically with them, there's a lot we learned. There are questions that they may not ask during webinars and information sessions virtually. But when you sit with them in a room, for example, in Brussels, we met at the boardroom of the embassy, and we had one-to-one tete-a-tete. We got to understand a bit that the diaspora, the $4.2 billion they bring in the country, or 4 billion euros per year, much more could happen if we lay the right carpets for them to bring more investment. But yes, let me just add that there are also foreign investors Belgian investors, French investors, German investors who are willing, and we will be having a conversation with Honorable Bunyasi on how we can tap onto that. Next month, as we have the 10th annual Diaspora Homecoming Convention, we'll have a deal room where a number of curated small to medium projects and also big ticket projects would be put in a room and then matched with partners. We have already, apart from Ambassador Meg, who has graciously accepted to be a keynote speaker at this event, we have a number of major American business people who will be in town to interact with our upcoming startup companies and the big ones as well.
Right. So I'm just wondering if whether while you're coming through the customs, you went through what we have here in the editorial cartoon yesterday on the JKA with the latest development. If you may just have that cartoon. Taxable. Did they look into your into your bag?
Well, the BAL, obviously, they check anytime you go out, come into the country.
No, especially for this, if you've got anything that is above, or it's worth 75,000 shillings and above, you're taxed.
Yeah, I go through the green channel because I don't have what requires to be declared.
Okay, what I'm just trying to ask is to just prompt a conversation with the taxation.
Yeah? But while on that, the BAL, I find it hilarious to say that somebody goes out with a phone. I'm just hoping this is a joke being carried far. But if it's reality, then KRA needs to get its act right. You can't tell somebody to go out with a laptop when you come back with it, or a phone, and then you're being asked to pay tax. I think we need to review our aspect of taxation. But maybe Bill...
It's not a joke. It's not a joke. It's been happening the last few months.
It's been happening the last few months.
Very painful. When you see what happens in Jomo Kenyatta, you're in that queue. Very painful. I mean, you know, people come, when you go and travel, forget about tourists, Kenyans who go and travel. I mean, you buy something for your children, you buy things for your wife, you come with gifts. Small things. I mean, those guys have to go through your bag, open everything. This is why, if they find 2 pieces of new shirts, it's going to be taxed because these are new items. But I mean, you don't look for taxes on personal effects and gifts people buy. I mean, this country, people are paying taxes. But you know, it's the only country, when you travel from other countries, you've seen how people go with bags with Sudan, Uganda, other people. That's not, at the airport, people are not harassed on personal effects. In Kenya, it's a nightmare. And people pay a lot of money, by the way, because once they tell you stand aside with those things, and what happens to that money, by the way, is taken by KRA officers most of the time. Rarely do people actually end up paying that money officially with. Most of the time, it's, you know, it ends up in negotiation somewhere there. I think it's sad, and people find it very painful. You buy a phone, it's, you know, 100,000, and you are told pay 60%. I mean, and you bought this thing for a friend, you bought this thing for. I mean, it's madness. Mm-hmm. It's discouraging people. What they're doing is really looking for money. Look, you have raided the pockets of Kenyans through taxes on their salaries. You have taxed them in everything, from their fuel to everything. Why do you want to follow them up to their homes and to their personal effects and to their bags? I mean, it's madness. You cannot run a country through taxes from that kind of thing. I mean, there are better ways of running this country. Let's not discourage our people. Mm-hmm. You know, people are now getting scared. You can't buy anything. You can't come with gifts. And then it's being done to even the tourists and everybody.
Even the tourists?
Everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you cameras, you have to pay taxes on them.
I've had that. I travel a lot. I've been through some of those things. And the key thing is every traveler has to know their rights. Now, what they published was actually something that is not new. It's been there for a long time, that list. But you have to know your rights according to that list. And it's very clear. The $500 is what you are allowed to bring in, not in total what you went out with and everything else. And I always use that if I've got anything new. I am allowed up to $500 of new stuff to come in, right? Which is not stuff that I went out with. So I bought a golf club or something like that, which is 25,000 shillings. And they say, is this new? I say, yeah, it's new. You have to pay duty. I say, no, my allowance is $500. And I stand my ground. And normally I'm left. So I agree with Bello that this is not normally that you've got to pay duty. it is purely rent seeking.
Rent seeking, yeah.
At the end of the day.
Rent seeking, yes.
Yeah, those regulations have always been there. They are not new, right? There was a time when you had to fill that form in before coming into the country.
Declaration
form.
Yeah,
the declaration form. Everybody had to fill it in. And this, I'm going back 5 or 6 years, right? And you used to fill it in and you do all that, but they never used to be as bad as they are now in terms of, using that to try and, get money out of people who are, you've traveled for 8 hours, you're from the US, you've traveled 16 hours in the air, and you're arriving in Kenya at, 11 o'clock at night. And what you want to do is to get home, get out, meet your family who are out there waiting for you, and then you get met with this. People will part with money directly, and these guys are happy to just let you go. And it's made even worse because in the last 5 years, what they've done, they've got a scanner as you come out of baggage. Yeah, they've got a scanner which is scanning, which is basically scanning hand luggage, because the other luggage is scanned inside, and then they have an X on it if they think there's something in there, and then they now scan your hand luggage there. Once you got an X, you're in for trouble. At the end of the day, there's a whole thing within that within the customs team that they exit in there, and those guys out there, check that baggage, you think there's some stuff in there, and if you got 2 bottles of perfume in there, that's what they're looking for. I think it's a shame that is happening, right? The laws are clear and they're very fair, but the way it is being interpreted by the people who are handling those things I think is almost criminal.
Maybe this is where we need the body cams for the KRA, when they were talking about they'll be having the body cams as well at the customs, so that I think it's getting to be very petty. Because when you look at also the Daily Nation today, you can see that story there, that even now the e-citizen will be, that is where they want to target. If you look at, let me just zoom in there, we see together that KRA now eyes e-citizen data to catch tax cheats. Taxman seeking to use third-party data from the e-citizen platform to catch individuals and firms evading tax as part of its strategies to hit its staff revenue targets. Right? Where is the data protection breach here? If you're going for the third party, we have actually given you our data, but now KRA wants, does it have the carte blanche to, or the latitude to just get our details as well, since it's a revenue collector? Maybe we should answer that question on the other side of the break. All right, we'll take a short break. You're watching Sokoni here. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at also the cost of living and also how the National Dialogue Committee took views from stakeholders, and where the Control of Budget is also warning that this measures by the government on tax revenue collection, it will be counterproductive. We'll take a short break.